And joining me now from London is Hugh Lovatt, a Senior Policy Fellow with the Middle East and North Africa Programme at the European Council on Foreign Relations. Thank you very much, Hugh, for your time. We're now in unprecedented territory with this war. What needs to happen to make sure it doesn't quickly spiral to become a regional conflict?
Well, unfortunately, our options are quite limited. When clearly Israel now is moving towards an extremely severe military retaliation against Gaza. And I think clearly when it comes to the specific fighting between Hamas and Israel, I think the de-escalatory path is limited. However, I think now the focus, I think the European focus should very much be indeed trying to prevent this the spread of Israeli-Palestinian violence in Gaza, preventing that spreading to other parts of the occupied territories of Israel, and from there into Lebanon. And I think we need to appreciate that what is unfortunately going to be also an ever higher Palestinian death toll will do a lot to fan Palestinian and Arab anger. And I think the sort of images that we're unfortunately likely to see in the days to come in terms of violence in Gaza will unfortunately put pressure on other Palestinian factions, including potentially on Hezbollah, to intervene. So I think the starting point is very much, supporting Israel's right to self-defense in line with international law, but trying to constrain its initial response to avoid civilian casualties and massive destruction. That's the first point. And then obviously there's a humanitarian track that needs to be pursued vis-a-vis Gaza, and important messaging to all parties.
How much sway does European powers have on either party?
Well, theoretically, Europe does have some sway and some leverage over Israel. It has, over the decades, proven very reluctant to use that. And while not obviously justifying Hamas's use of disproportionate violence against civilians, we need to recognize that where we are today is, above all, a political failure. It's a collapse in the Middle East peace process and political horizons. And I think there is collective blame, and there's European blame for that in terms of international lack of attention and diligence over years. And so, yes, that is the first point in terms of lack of Europe not doing enough, I think, to constrain Israel. With regards to Hamas, Europe has never developed any real political track with Hamas. So its ability to leverage to pressure Hamas is limited. So we'll have to work through other regional actors, regional partners such as Egypt and Qatar.
And when you talk about regional actors, how much do you personally think Iran was involved with these attacks?
Well, clearly, there would have had to be some coordination. I mean, given the scale, the complexity of this operation, the fact that it's clearly been months in the making, and the fact that we do know that officials from Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah have regularly met with Iranian leaders. So I'd be very surprised if Iran was not aware. And clearly, Iran has its own interests in terms of what's happening as potentially a means to also counter Israeli-Arab, Israeli-Saudi normalization, reassert Iranian deterrence, asymmetric deterrence. But I think we need to also be clear that what is happening is above all Hamas's decision based on Hamas's own independent calculations in terms of how it chooses to respond to the current political and security deterioration that we've been seeing way before this, unfortunately, for months.
Where does this leave the apparent normalisation deal with the Saudis? Has it been both literally and metaphorically blown out of the water?
Well, it's certainly been delayed, given the images that will now appear on Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya, and other Arab channels. It's clearly going to be very difficult for the Saudis to move forward. Now, to what extent it is permanently disrupted, that will depend very much on things to come over the coming days. And again, as much, the more that Israel's response is violent, is severe, and does one way or the other collectively target Palestinians in Gaza, the more that Israel does that, the more difficult it will be for not just Saudi Arabia, but also other Arab members of the Abraham Accords to move forward with deepening their bilateral relations with Israel.
Certainly one actor that hasn't been mentioned that much in the last 48 hours is Russia. And Putin is clearly benefiting from this by taking the global attention away from Ukraine, is he not?
Certainly, I think from a strategic and tactical perspective, this does favour Russia. And as you said, it changes the conversation that just look at the news. Ukraine hasn't been in the front pages for a few days now. perhaps it is also another opportunity for Russia, obviously very cynically and hypocritically, but to talk about, to demonstrate, to show how Europe, US do not appear to be upholding international law. That yes, they quite rightly criticize Hamas for its violation of international law and its targeting of civilians, but fails to do that to the same extent when it comes to Israel's attack on civilians. So I think there is also this plays into this very cynical Russian game of trying to undermine Western credibility on the global stage, but also specifically in what's called the global South, in Africa especially.
Hugh Lovatt, thank you very much again for your time. We're going to have to leave it there.